that we had in 2012-2013 to implement the human right to water and sanitation in European legislation. And this campaign was initiated by the European Public Service Unions, EPSU, the Trade Union Confederation of all workers in the public sector in Europe. And yes, there it is. And we started this campaign because it was an opportunity. It was a new tool provided by the European Commission that citizens could do a proposal for legislation, or citizens could propose an issue that they wanted to put on the European political agenda. So we, the trade unions, where I was at that time, decided to put the human right to water forward, to put it implemented in the European political agenda. And I will discuss about these issues because you have to look at this campaign in the context in which it was taking place. It was sorry, I can't find the word. It was to challenge the European neoliberal agenda. It was in the age that we had seen a lot of privatizations taking place in Europe. We had just had the referendum in Italy about privatization of water, the situation in Greece. We had a Concessions directive that was on the political agenda at that time. So these are all factors that influenced and had an impact on our campaign and our motivation to campaign. So we made a concrete proposal because that's what we had to do in this European Citizens Initiative, and we made 3 demands. First one was we asked the European Union to implement the human right to water in European law. The second demand was that we asked the European Union to stop liberalization of water services. And the third demand was that we asked the European Union to do a bigger effort to achieve universal access. And that was the concrete campaign. And the idea behind this, that we want to achieve a change in mindset in the European Union, a change from their market approach to a rights-based approach. So the first issue was the neoliberal agenda that we had seen over the past decades. Well, the priority of the European Union is the single market, the fulfillment of the single market. And what was happening at the same time is that the European Commission was pressing member states to reduce their spending and, in fact, open up all sectors for European-wide competition. The second issue that we had in mind and that we were facing was a threat of further privatization of water services. And we had seen examples in Spain, in Greece, in Germany, and locally many people had campaigned against it or protested because they have noticed that privatization did not help to improve or extend services, but in fact, in many cases, made services more expensive or even excluded groups from access to water and sanitation. A big motivation to do this European-wide campaign was in the Italian referendum that took place a year before. And it was a big success in Italy because 27 million people voted in a referendum against privatization of water services. And here you see the examples of posters that were used in this campaign. And yeah, as trade unions and organizations that did the European Citizens Initiative, we thought that what happened in Italy would be a big motivation for the people in the rest of Europe. We were at the same time as the problems in Greece, when Greece had to seek for a bailout with the European, or with the Troika, the European Central Bank, the European Union and the International Monetary Fund. And one of the proposals of the Troika was to put the water companies for sale. And the people in Greece realized that the water services was essential to them, and it would selling the water services would only make their life even more expensive and harder, and their life was getting harder by the day. So we campaigned with the people in Greece to prevent the sale of the water companies in Greece. And another issue that was taking place at the same time was the Concessions Directive that was on the agenda of the European Union. And this Concession Directive was a directive that more sectors should be opened up for competition. And one of the sectors was the water sector. And it was put into this Concession Directive in a kind of secretive way, because in the first instance the Commissioner did not want to answer questions from journalists to what sectors do you have in mind there in which should be more European-wide competition. And the Commissioner did not want to mention the water sector, but because journalists went digging into the details of the proposal for this Concessions Directive, they found out that the water sector was in fact one of the most prominent sectors that should be opened up for European-wide competition. And that played an important role in our Right to Water campaign. So when we campaigned, we thought, well, how are we going to reach out to all citizens in Europe to sign for a petition that the human right to water must be put in European legislation. And we knew as trade unions that we could not do it alone. So we searched for other civil society organizations, groups, churches, companies, all kinds of people that have a network in society. And we thought the broader our basis, the bigger our chances to reach out to the millions of people in Europe. And we saw that all kind of organizations that joined us in our campaign, they had different motives, different background, different strategies or different priorities, but we saw we had one thing in common. And the one thing that we had in common was the idea that water is a human right and water is a public good, and that it's not a commodity that can be bought and sold as a merchandise. I don't know if I get other slides back, but to finish, the campaign was a big success. We collected over 1.6 million signatures in Europe, so the European Union had to answer to our demands. There it is. We had a number of good outcomes. I put them first here, but we also had 3 negative aspects, so to say. In fact, the Commission did not implement the right to water in European law and said, well, that's an issue for member states to decide. So, in fact, legally, we did not achieve what we wanted, but what we did achieve was that the right to water was really in focus of the people in Europe, in focus of all political parties in Europe, and in focus of the European Commission. So I think that was a big achievement, and I think this achievement has only been reached because we united such a diversity of groups in our campaign for human right to water. And I think this diversity was our biggest strength, but another conclusion that we also could take from this campaign is that we did not change the mindset in the European Union. The market approach still dominates, so the struggles for water justice, for a rights-based approach to water and sanitation must continue. Thank you very much.